Husband's been sneaking out early mornings to meet a woman in a different town without telling me. And the first time I realized I wasn't crazy was the morning my coffee went cold twice before I took a sip and I could hear the garbage truck 5 blocks away and still no sound from his side of the bed, and it hit me with this quiet, stubborn certainty that he wasn't in the bathroom or in the kitchen stirring oats like he said he'd been doing lately. He was gone again. And I needed to stop pretending it was a sweet new habit of dawn jogs he'd suddenly acquired at 37. I should introduce myself before I take you into the minute-by-minute weirdness of it all. I'm Lila, I'm 32, and I'm a speech-language pathologist who works with kids who say their RS like WS and adults who've had strokes and need to relearn the choreography of words. You know, the tiniest muscles doing the most important job. I spend my days coaxing sound from silence, tracing patients into vowels, celebrating the first clear rainbow like a parade. And maybe that's why this whole thing's sliced deeper than I expected, because I make a living helping other people say the truth out loud, and at home I'd been swallowing my own. I didn't want to be the person who snoops, I promise. I grew up in a family where privacy was sacred. Mom would knock on my bedroom door even if it was open. But we'd been married 5 years, and in the last 6 months Elias had become a creature of the 5 a.m. world, slipping out of bed with a practiced care that insulted me more than if he'd just stomped around, leaving his side of the duvet cool, the car engine purring to life beneath our window. It started 2 months after we'd lost his father, and right when my clinic moved to a new building in a different suburb. Stress braided our schedules into knots. He said the jogging helped. He said he liked the way the city felt before it woke. He said it like someone who'd rehearsed it on the walk up our steps, like a line that had to land. If you've ever stared at a ceiling fan long enough to understand clock time in the body, you'll know what I mean when I say the early morning, the hour before even birds feel like singing, feels like a lie detector. The quiet amplifies lies. That morning I rolled into the dip on his side of the mattress and pressed my palms into the sheets just to be sure they were truly cool, not waiting for me to make a problem. His pillow smelled like his hair gel and nothing else. My mind did the small bargaining like always. Maybe he went to the all-night pharmacy for the antihistamines he forgot, or maybe he's just in the car making a call where I can't hear him. But bargaining is only a hallway you pass through on the way to a locked door. I took the coffee cup with me and stood at our front window, the one with the streak you can never wipe off, and watched the street for his car. The sky held that gray that isn't a color, more like an apology. A jogger went by with reflective tape flashing like a fish. An older man walked 2 Dachshunds who, if they could speak, would complain about being awake. No Elias. So I did something I'd been avoiding. I opened the Notes app where I'd begun keeping an embarrassingly clinical log. Don't laugh. When you work in a field like mine, you think in data points, in patterns that form pictures when you're brave enough to look. February 2nd, woke 5:17, car on at 5:26, said ran the river track, showered 6:25, shirt inside out at collar. February 9th, 5:05, returned 6:38 with coffee for me, unusual, shirt different than one left house in. February 16th, smell citrus, not mine. It read like a diary written by a detective who also cried in the margins. That day I decided I would not cry in the margins. I called into the clinic and left a message for Lauren that my throat hurt and I didn't want to endanger my clients. Lies make more lies so easily you don't notice the scaffolding you've built until it blocks your own door. Then I went to the garage and sat in my car with the engine off just to feel like I was inside a plan. By 6, he still wasn't back. I texted him a simple, brave thing, all good. It showed as delivered. No typing dots. 10 minutes later, the garage door rattled and my chest did that stutter of guilt, as if I'd been the one caught. I ran inside and pretended I'd just woken up because sometimes I'm very brave and sometimes I am 11. He came in with wind-pink cheeks and a smile that almost looked like the old one. He kissed my forehead and said, "You awake early, Bubble." He still called me Bubble, and that almost did me in. Couldn't sleep, I said, which was both the truth and a half-truth. Was it a good run? He nodded, too many nods. I'll shower. Big day at the shop. He owns a little design and print studio near the train line. He makes menus and wedding invites and those big vinyl banners you see at school fetes that catch wind like they're ready to leave. In the shower, he sang a single line of a song over and over, the way you do when you're nervous and need a predictable loop to keep you steady. I recognized the tune because I'd heard it last week when he'd come home humming it, and when I asked what it was he said, "Just a radio thing," and later I heard it not on the radio but on a street busker's guitar when I took a different route from the station. It's a song about hiding in plain sight. So I stood at the bathroom counter with the fog trying to press me away, and I said carefully, "When you go to the river track, do you start at the south end or the bridge?" He paused. People who lie and aren't used to it hesitate for fractions of seconds, like tripping over an invisible step. "South," he said. "Why?" "Just asking," I said, and then rubbed a circle in the fog on the mirror and looked at my own mouth. The corners were holding something they'd never held before, like I was training them to say words that aren't taught in school. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not sorry either. There's a line between those two that only makes sense when it's your life. I waited for him to leave, I waited for the garage to swallow the car, and then I went into his top drawer where he kept 3 things: extra phone chargers, a thick blue tape measure, and an old Android he used as a music player in the shop. I don't speak sign language fluently, but there's a type of quiet that feels like a signed oath. I felt that in my bones as I charged the phone, turned it on, and held my breath. It was mostly empty, no SIM, just Spotify, a weather app, and an old maps application that still remembered the last place it had been asked to lead someone to. There it was, Red Bank. A town 40 minutes northwest. A place we'd never go because honestly, there's nothing there for us. I did not explode. I did not throw the phone into the sink and let it drown. I took a photo. I wrote down the time and the tiny detail that my hands were steady while my heart was a bird. Then I turned off the phone and put it exactly where I'd found it. I spent the next 30 minutes making everything look normal: oats in the pan, coffee grounds scooped, the cat's bowl filled to the exact habitual arc. When he came home that night with his tired-eyed smile and a sweet, heavy bag of pastries from the new bakery near the library, Bribery by Butter, I hugged him long enough to map his shoulder blades with my palms and long enough for him to say into my hair, "What's up?" I wanted to answer everything and nothing, but I said, "Just glad you're home." The next morning I set an alarm for 4:55. I already keep odd hours for some patients, so this wasn't unnatural, but it felt like camping out inside my own life. He slipped out again, and this time I followed, not close enough to tail him like a movie, just close enough to see if he turned right toward the river track or left toward the highway. Left. The car blinked like a guilty thing as he signaled onto the ramp. I waited. I finished half my coffee and ate a piece of toast without tasting it. Then I drove too, heart careful in my chest, windows just a crack open to let in the morning like a witness. I didn't go all the way to Red Bank. I pulled into a servo at the edge of town, the kind where the baked goods look sad but the manager knows every trucker by nickname. I sat there and tried to feel what I was feeling. A young woman in a high-vis vest was wiping down the coffee machines, and she had the face of someone who's learned to keep conversations short and eyes kind. I wanted to tell her I was running a small private experiment in honesty and trust, and the results were scaring me. Instead, I bought a bottle of water and said, "Early start." She said, "Always," and the way she said it made me think of all the people in this world who wake up early for reasons that are beautiful and reasons that are knives. I turned around. My hands were stable, so I drove home. I showered, I dressed, I went to the clinic, and I spent 4 hours teaching a boy named Marcus to put his tongue behind his teeth to find the S he'd misplaced somewhere in kindergarten. We did sun and sauce and silly, and when he said silly with an S that shone, his mother cried quietly into her sleeve. I gave them both stickers even though he's technically too old for stickers because sometimes you need to mark a moment where sound arrives. My phone stayed face down on my desk. I would not let my marriage turn me into someone who checked notifications between syllables. You want me to jump to the reveal. I can feel it. Your lungs have been holding air for too many paragraphs. But this wasn't a single reveal, it was a series of low doors I had to bend through. The first was when I finally asked him that Friday night if he was still going to the river track. He said yes. The second was when I said, "I went to the river myself on Tuesday. I didn't see you," not an accusation, more like a shared memory that had failed to happen. He stared at me like I had switched languages mid-sentence. "Maybe you just missed me," he said. "Maybe," I said, and in the space after maybe, silence lined up like soldiers. That weekend we went to his mother's for Sunday lunch and sat at the table where his father used to tap the wood near his plate when he was about to make a joke. There's a phantom tapping you can hear long after the hand is gone. Elias filled his mother's water glass and kissed her cheek and carried the heavy pot of lamb like a man who has only Sundays to perform goodness. I watched him move through the rooms of his childhood and thought of Red Bank like a stain on a white shirt only I could see. Monday morning. 4:55 again. I'd slept with my jaw clenched so hard I dreamed of chewing ice. He slipped out. I gave him a 5-minute head start and then I drove. The highway was a ribbon thrown just for us, no traffic, just the occasional utility vehicle and a sky trying to convince me it would be a good day if I let it. I got to Red Bank earlier than I planned. I told myself I would turn around if all I saw was tradies and bakery signs. But my car made its own choices, gentle ones. I turned onto the main street, which is entirely too optimistic a term for it, and there she was. I didn't know her yet. All I knew was the shape of him in the reflection of a shopfront window, and the way his shoulders dipped when he hugged someone, not like he hugged me, but like he was sorry and hopeful at the same time. And there, under the awning of a modest cafe whose chalkboard said, "Try our carrot cake, Mum's recipe," a woman with a braid sat with her elbows on the table and a look on her face like she'd been waiting since the train lines were laid. Do you know that feeling where you could walk forward and shatter, or you could stay still and calcify, and either way you end up less soft than you were? I parked too far away and I didn't get out. I watched him sit, watched him touch her forearm the way you touch a cat that might bolt, watched him laugh, watched her cover her mouth because her teeth weren't ready to laugh with him yet. They looked like a beginning and an ending at once. I took a picture on my phone. Then I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and typed with my thumbs, "Where are you?" to him, and when he didn't look at his phone I knew he had put it away for this, and the part of me that still loves courtesy hated him for being considerate to someone else. An older guy in a hat knocked on my window and lowered it with a smile like we were about to share a joke. "You lost, love," he said. His vowels had the roundness of someone who's never left. "Just early," I said. "Aren't we all?" he said. He pointed his chin toward the cafe. "Best carrot cake in town," he said, and then softer like he was telling me a secret, "They do second chances here. Don't know how, but they do." He left before I could ask what he meant. Maybe he saw in my face a woman rehearsing a sentence that would change her own name when she said it. I did not confront them. I did not throw the door open and shout, "Is this how your run goes?" I drove away. I went to a park and sat under a tree and wrote down everything I had seen, the braid, the chipped blue nail polish, the way Elias sat forward like gravity had moved the carrot cake sign. I wrote it like a case note because I know how to assemble a story that will stand on its own feet and not collapse into crying. And I thought about my clients who come to me when language has been knocked out of them by surgery or time, and how we rebuild words by pairing them with pictures. I needed pictures. But I also needed him to speak. That night I made spaghetti and poured the exact amount of wine that would make my face warm but my tongue clear. He came home later than he said, with a plastic tub of offcuts from the shop for the recycle bin and a smile that did not transfer to his eyes. We ate. We talked about the neighbor's wild rosemary and how it was invading our little strip of soil like it had ideas. Then I said softly, "Who is she?" It sounded like I was asking about a comet. He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. He put the fork down so carefully you'd think it was made of glass. "What?" I held his gaze in that quiet pre-dawn way. "The woman you meet in Red Bank." The air was immediately too big for our apartment. He reached for anger the way people reach for coats by the door, out of habit. "That's no. Lila, no." I let him try on his coats, surprise, indignation, woundedness, and then I said, because I am a therapist and a wife and a person who has run out of empty cupboards to stuff silence into, "I saw you." He folded in on himself. It wasn't a dramatic collapse, just a small animal making itself smaller. "Ah," he said. One syllable, entirely honest. There are so many versions of how this conversation could go. In one he lies until my face becomes a mirror he can't stand. In one he confesses to a tangled love that started in a queue for carrot cake. In one he shouts and breaks the wineglass and later apologizes with daffodils from the petrol station. In our version, he put his hand on the table between us, palm up, like I was supposed to put mine there and would pray. I didn't. He said, "Her name is Romy." The name hit my chest like a door swung open onto wind. "How do you know her?" I said, and my voice was steady enough to make me proud of all my boring exercises. "Blow this feather, feel your diaphragm." "From before," he said. "The summer I didn't come with you to Byron. I never told you about that summer. You told me you worked extra shifts." He nodded. "I did. And I saw her at the pub and it was nothing then, I swear it was." He put his hands to his face in that way people do, like they're trying to cup the words before they fall. "Her little boy is mine. I have a list of things the body does without permission. Goosebumps in the wrong weather, tears when you bite your cheek too hard, laughter in funerals because grief loosens weird screws. Add to that list the way your hands go cold when you hear the sentence that rearranges your life." "How old?" I said, because numbers give your brain something solid to hold, like a banister on a shaking staircase. "4," he said. "His name is Sasha." He said it like he was putting a glass ornament on a high shelf. "She told me last year," he said. "Her partner left her a few months after the baby was born and she didn't ask for anything, she just wanted me to know. I didn't tell you because," he stopped. We both looked at the space where the because would go. "Because saying it makes it real," I offered, "because I coach people who fear their own tongues into finding soft places for hard words." He nodded, tears suddenly wild in his eyes, like a storm had found a crack. "I was a coward," he said. "I thought if I could just show up for them quietly early mornings, no one would be hurt." He looked at me then, finally. "But you're hurt." I didn't break. I didn't become huge and loud. I became very precise. "Why Red Bank?" I asked, even though I knew. "So no one would see," he said. "So I could be someone else on those mornings. I buy him hot chocolate. We walk to the playground. I push him on the swing. He likes to go high, but he closes his eyes when he gets too high. He says he likes the dark rush." He had a half smile on his face like he'd told me something about the weather, and I wanted to hate him for the softness in his mouth that said he had memoized his son. A son. Not hypothetical. Not maybe someday. Present tense. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, and I heard the childishness in it and did not correct. He shook his head. I didn't know how to put the sentence next to the life we had without setting it on fire. I kept thinking one day I'll find the right way to say it. But there isn't a right way. And then my dad got sick. And then he gestured in a way that meant time, work, grief, dishes in the sink, the way days make a rope that ties your hands without you noticing. I told myself I was protecting you. I told myself that being there for him was the least I could do, that I'd keep it quiet and separate and neat like a lunchbox with compartments. He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "But I'm not neat," he said. "I'm an idiot who's good at making invitations and terrible at making confessions." I let the quiet stretch until it got uncomfortable, then I let it stretch further. That kind of quiet makes people choose honestly or badly. "Are you in love with her?" I asked finally, not gently, not cruelly, just like asking, "Is it raining outside?" He shook his head immediately, too quickly and then slower. "I love the part of my life that sits with them," he said. "I don't know if that's the same thing. I love you. That's the part one know for sure. Loving isn't the problem. The problem is the door between the rooms." "You built the door," I said. "You built it and you locked it and then you told yourself that meant the house was safe." He nodded like a child who knows the answer is in the textbook but still wants the teacher to circle it. I am not a saint. There's a version of me that throws the spaghetti at the wall and packs a bag and keys his car with a sentence only I will understand. There's also the version of me that forgets my own name in the face of a small boy I have not met. The real me walked to the sink and ran the water and watched it steam even before it hit the pan. I needed the ordinary mechanics: plate, scrub, rinse, stack. "We need to make an appointment with a solicitor," I said. "We need to make an appointment with a couples counselor. We need to make an appointment with my anger. The order of those things might change depending on how I wake up tomorrow. He stood to help and I put my hand up. No, I said. Sit. You can help by not narrating your guilt to me while I decide whether to keep the light on. The days after were not dramatic so much as granular. You know how sand can grind a beautiful thing down until it's beach? That. I told Lauren at work that I needed one afternoon off a week for family stuff, and she gave me that look good managers give that says don't say anything else if you don't want to and here's a tissue anyway. I started going to a yoga class where a retired nurse named Anu calls everyone dearie and adjusts your shoulders with the gravity of a person who has held dying hands. I bought a cheap notebook and wrote things like, does this define me? And what part of this makes me bigger? And I deserve sentences spoken in daylight. Not because mantras fix anything, but because you need somewhere to put words while you decide which ones you believe. On the fourth morning after the confession, funny word confession, like you can put sin in a bowl and pass it around and it becomes lighter, he asked if I wanted to come with him. Not to meet them, he said quickly, eyes huge. I know we haven't decided any of that. Just to see the town the way it looks when someone is proud of you. That broke me in an unexpected place. I don't know, I said honestly, because honesty had become this stubborn friend who insists on sitting in the front seat. He nodded. I'll go, he said, and when I get back, I'll be here. I will be here until you tell me to leave. He went. I made coffee. I stood at the window and didn't watch the driveway. I took a shower and cried until the water ran cold, then got out and laughed because that's the kind of cliché that means you're alive and you've seen movies and your body doesn't care. I sat on the floor with the towel around me and texted my sister because she's the person who has always said, do you want me to go feral or do you want me to be wise, and who can switch between those modes like a bilingual goddess. She texted back, feral first, then wise. Then, do you want me to come over with ice cream? Then 2 minutes later, I'm outside. We ate ice cream at 9 a.m. on my couch and made a list called What Would Make This Less Like Drowning? Item 1, Not Pretending. Item 2, Legal Advice Before Rage Purchases. Item 3, Decide terms of any meeting with child that honor me as a person, not just a service provider of forgiveness. Item 4, Separate finances until further notice. Item 5, Tell mum before she hears it from a rogue aunt. Item 6, Let me be good at my job still, even if I feel newly bad at being a wife. My sister has a way of turning grief into a to-do list that doesn't make you hate her. It's a gift like perfect pitch. When he came home, I was ready for the conversation I didn't know I'd been rehearsing since I was a kid, watching my parents work things out with full sentences instead of slammed doors. Here's what I want, I said, and I said it with all the small muscles I've trained to be brave. I want you to tell Romy that you have told me. I want it in a text I see because I can't keep living inside an untold story. I want to decide if I meet Sasha and when, with time to become a person I like on that day. I want you to sleep in the guest room for now, not as punishment but as space where my body can unclench enough to think. I want us to see a counselor because I need a third pair of ears in the room. I want you to get a paternity test, not because I want to humiliate anyone, but because paperwork makes the government behave and because we are going to build a new thing and I need it to stand. He listened, really listened, the way my clients' parents listen when their child says a new sound for the first time. And then he did something simple that felt holy. He said, yes. Okay. Yes. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't a montage. The solicitor used words like obligations and rights and disclosure, and I wanted to lie down on the carpet like a toddler and say, why do grown-up words feel like cliffs? Our counselor, a calm woman named Hannah who wore boots you could walk strong distances in, asked us questions like, where in your body do you feel the lie and where in your body do you feel the truth? And sometimes I would say my jaw and he would say my ribs, and we would look at each other like two animals in neighboring fields who have just discovered the fence is made of string. He wrote the text to Romy while I sat on the other end of the sofa with my sister's hand on my ankle. I told Lila, he wrote. She knows everything. I am sorry for the delay and sorry for the silo I kept. We will make a plan that honors everyone. She replied an hour later, thank you. Tell her I am sorry too. I don't want to be a secret in anyone's home. There are moments I didn't expect. Like the first time I saw a photo of Sasha and my breath did that animals recognize their own thing because his eyes, my God, those were Elias' eyes on a smaller head, eyes that looked like they had memoized more stars than the sky allowed. Or the morning I put on a sweater and smelled smoke in it from a barbecue we'd had 2 months earlier and thought, even scents have longer memory than some confessions. Or the afternoon Marcus, the S-kid, stood in front of the window at my clinic and said perfectly, I can say sunshine, and I thought I can say mine too, my hurt, my healing, my threshold. It took weeks before I felt like I could drive to Red Bank without wanting to reverse the car off the map. But I did go, one late morning when I wasn't scheduled until noon. I parked not too far from the cafe and went in and ordered a slice of carrot cake like an anthropologist infiltrating a tribe. The woman at the counter asked if I wanted the corner piece with extra frosting, and for some reason that felt like an omen in my favor. I took a table by the window where the chalk squeaks might erase me if I needed. And I watched. I don't mean I spied, I mean I observed the town, the way the postie waved at a little boy on a scooter, the way 2 teenage girls shared one pair of earbuds and giggled like the world owed them songs, the way an old man sat with a newspaper he didn't turn the page on for 20 minutes and still looked satisfied. When I left, the woman with the braid was outside with a bag of groceries, and she looked at me directly as if we'd been set to meet by some cosmic clock. She said, "You're Lila." Not a question. I nodded, my throat a parched field. "I'm Romy," she said, and then before I could deflect or stiffen or recite a speech, she held up a hand and said, "I won't keep you." I just wanted to say this out loud in daylight. The secret was heavy and I carried some of it, and I am sorry. There was no performed sorrow in her face, just the sturdy kind you see in women who have changed attire at midnight. "Thank you," I said. My voice didn't wobble. Her shoulders dropped half an inch, the kind of letting go the body does when a load is passed from one hand to two. I didn't meet Sasha that day. That happened later, in a park with a frog statue that every child climbs even though there's a sign that says, "Please don't climb the frog." He ran ahead of Romy on small legs with a lion on the front of his yellow jumper, and he stopped 3 feet from me like a magnet had caught him. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I said. "Do you like frogs?" He looked at the statue. "That is a toad," he said gravely, and I wanted to kneel and thank whatever God preserves children's certainty. Elias stood behind him, looking like a man who had been given a glass of water after walking through summer. We had agreed on gentle boundaries. I was Lila, not aunt, not friend of daddy. I was a person in a park who had time for small conversations and not a lot of questions. We pushed the swing. He asked if I could push him high. I said, "Are you brave?" He nodded. I said, "Close your eyes when it's too high. The dark rush feels like flying." He laughed and said, "Dark rush," like he was tucking a new phrase in his pocket. When he jumped off, he stumbled and got that look kids get where they scan your face for whether to cry. I smiled wide and held my hands out, and he didn't cry. I went home and lay on the floor and cried very quietly into the rug. We are not perfect now. That's not the end of this story. I'm not telling you a neat arc where confession leads to growth, leads to forgiveness, leads to golden hour family photos. I'm telling you I opened my eyes every morning for months and gauged the weather in my chest like a farmer deciding whether to plant. Some days I said, "We will stay married and we will be a complicated joy." Some days I said, "We might be 2 good people who made a mess and have to live in different houses so the mess doesn't become our wallpaper." We drew up a co-parenting agreement that includes me not as a mother because language matters and that's Romy's word, but as someone who will not be erased from a child's map because he was born from a man I love. We set mornings where Elias goes, and I do not wonder because wondering has a calendar now. We set the kind of rules that look boring in print and feel like scaffolding in a high wind. It took time for my friends to find the right tone with me. Some went feral early and said, "Kick him to the curb." Others went therapist on me and said, "Honor the lineage of your love," and I wanted to tell both camps to go into a field and shout while I learned to peel an orange without removing the whole rind. My mother stunned me by being quietly fierce. She brought me lentil soup and said, "In every story there is a love that comes before the characters know what it is for. Maybe this is you learning your love's job description." I wanted to protest that I don't want my love to have a job description. I want it to be a lake we float on, cold and clear and simple, But if there's anything I've learned from tiny muscles teaching big truths, it's that there's no such thing as simple when you're trying to say something that matters. On our wedding anniversary, which we did not celebrate with a restaurant because I couldn't bear white napkins and delicate glass, he gave me a folded letter on thick paper he'd printed himself because him. I read it at the kitchen counter while the kettle took too long to boil, and it said things like, "I have trained myself to be brave at the wrong times, and I want to build a house with no secret doors, and if you choose to leave me, I will still be a better father to both the child I made outside our vows and the one we may or may not have someday, because you taught me how to add daylight to a sentence." I did not decide that night. I did not forgive completely. I did not forget at all. But I looked at him across our foolish counter with the small chip we never fix and thought I could stay. Not because I am afraid of leaving, but because I am braver now than the person who would leave just to avoid the work of staying. If you're waiting for the twist, no, he wasn't secretly in love with someone else, and no, I didn't suddenly discover a piece of mail addressed to another name that explained everything. The twist was quieter. I learned I could live with the discomfort of a truth if it is spoken in front of me while the sun is up. That might be an unromantic thing to say, but it's the most romantic thing I know at 32. I learned that secrets grow in shade, not in distance. I learned that the language of us includes words like paternity test and mediation alongside remember when we danced to that terrible cover band in the rain, and somehow both can be real without canceling the other out. And I learned that children do not care about your delicate adult narrative, they care if you push the swing and you don't flinch when they shout higher. The last thing I'll tell you is small. One morning, months into the work of rebuilding, I left the clinic late and stopped at the markets and bought a bag of mandarins because the smell makes me feel like I'm 7 and holding the future like a ball. When I got home, Elias was already there, and on the kitchen table sat a little paper crown made from a strip of misprinted invitations, stapled at the ends. "What's this?" I asked, smiling despite myself. He shrugged, sheepish. "I was cutting scrap for recycling, and I remembered you said you always wanted to be queen of something stupid. I thought maybe you could be queen of the kitchen for a night." I rolled my eyes so hard they almost clicked, and then I put the crown on and made us pasta, and we ate on the couch and watched a documentary about coral because sometimes you need creatures who build kingdoms by spitting out color to remind you what patience can make. When the credits rolled, he said, "Tomorrow's a Red Bank morning," and my body braced, but then he added, "Do you want a photo when we're at the frog, sorry, Toad?" I smiled then, the kind of smile you can hear. "Yes," I said, because the daylight voice in me has learned to ask for pictures. If you're hoping for a neat last line, there isn't one. Let me give you a living one instead. Today he left before dawn and I did not listen for the car like a detective. I rolled into his side of the bed and pressed my palms into the sheets, not to check the temperature but because I have an animal's gratitude for the shape of a person I love, even when that love is rearranging us both. I made coffee and drank it hot. I wrote a therapy plan for a client who says world like wold and thought how easy it is to hide a truth inside a word if you don't give your tongue time to learn its path. And then my phone buzzed and there was a photo of a little boy in a yellow jumper climbing a toad that requests children not climb it, and his eyes were laughing with the kind of light no early morning sneaking gets to own. I saved the photo. I saved myself. I saved the part of our life that insists on being spoken while the sun is up, and I am still deciding the rest, and that's not failure, that's a sentence said clearly, one patient syllable at a time.